Hello, my name is Elizabeth Bero, and I am the immediate past president here of the Von Braun Astronomical Society here in Huntsville, Alabama. And normally, every year, we offer a series of shows called The Star of Wonder about what could the Christmas star have been. And this year, we couldn't do it, of course, because of COVID. So I thought I would record a abbreviated version of this show and share it with our members and anybody who would like to see this. Um, so you might ask, what was the Star of Wonder? You heard about it in songs, maybe We Three Kings or the First Noel, and you would like to know more about this star. Well, asking an astronomer something will have the astronomer ask you back. When should we look? If you're going to ask me what was in the sky when Jesus was born, then I need to know, where was Jesus born? When was Jesus born? Well, the where is pretty easy. That's in the Bible, that he was born in Bethlehem. And if you get up Google, and first of all, I'd like to say thank you to Roy Young and Sandy Sherman and Melissa Snyder, who all contributed to the show. I am simply riding their coattails and sharing this with you. But this is all information that was given to me from other people, and thank you very much. But anyway, Huntsville, Alabama is not too far from Bethlehem. In terms of latitude, we're at 34 degrees, 0.7 north. They are at 31.7 north. So our sky should be about the same. So what people see in Bethlehem in the sky is very, very similar to what we see in the sky right here. Um, from the Bible, we can read in the book of Matthew a few more hints about when and where Jesus was born. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, "Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star in the east and have come to worship him." When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. All right. So we do get some time clues from the book of Matthew. Matthew tells us that Herod was king at the time of Jesus' birth. So let me hide this. There we go. Flavius Joseph, writing before 100 AD, stated that Herod died after a lunar eclipse and was buried before Passover. There were three possibilities for that. March 23rd of 5 BCE, March 13th of 4 BCE, and January 10th of 1 BCE. Those all kind of fit that criteria. So that gives us a window for when Jesus might have been born. Okay, and when we hear that phrase in the east, well, what does that mean? That could be interpreted to mean that either the star was in the eastern part of the sky, like at its rising, everything rises in the east, right? Okay, or that the wise men were in the eastern part of the world when they saw it. So if they came from anywhere around here in Arabia or Babylon area, they would have been looking west to see Jerusalem, but they would have been in the east. Okay. We don't know what season Jesus was born. We think maybe it could have been springtime because the shepherds were out all night with the flocks. The flocks that they were tending so carefully all night long would have been the special sheep that were destined for the temple and Passover and the Passover sacrifices. And those lambs had to be perfect. And so they had to be carefully tended and carefully taken care of. So those spring lambs might have been a clue as to the season that it was, but we don't know. I've also heard that those sheep were so careful, so important that they were cared for that carefully all year long. Um, our modern celebration on December 25th is most likely tied to an ancient uh, event called Saturnalia. And in 275 AD, or current era, the Emperor Aurelian proclaimed that date as Dies Natali Invictus, the birthday of the unconquerable sun. And it's tied to the winter solstice, which was also at around this time of year. And here we have some coins that commemorate that event. All right. The gifts might help us know more about the Magi. They gave gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And those are all tied to Arabia. Okay, so it's possible that the Magi came from either Arabia or Babylon and passed through Arabia on their way to Jerusalem. It was written in ancient times by a sailor sailing just offshore of Arabia, that the smell of the frankincense trees was so sweet that you could smell it even across the water offshore. So that's kind of a neat thing to know. Magi is plural for magus, which is the root of the word magician, and magic. And we're not entirely sure their origin, but they may have begun in Persia around the time of Zoroaster. And that was also about the time of the Jewish diaspora into Babylon. Remember, they were captured and taken to Babylon about 1000 BC. And there was a mingling of the cultures there. And the Babylonians learned about the Jewish culture, and they had access to the Jewish writings that we now call the Old Testament. And of course, the Jewish people had access to Babylonians' beliefs, which included angels and some things like that that we don't see in Jewish writings before that time. There's no specific number of magi given in the Bible. Could have been as few as 2, as many as 12. Many times they were depicted as Persians coming from the Iranian area. And as a matter of fact, this artwork here, which is a tile mosaic, was actually enabled a church to be saved from destruction by the Persians in 614. They saw what they looked like their ancestors commemorated on the floor of this church, and they saved the church. They didn't burn it. So we have this really nice artwork of the magicians there in their Phrygian hats and their special robes. All right. The Magi would have had access, like I said, to the Hebrew scriptures, so they would have been familiar with these passages as well. I see him, but not now. I behold him, but not near. A star shall come forth from Jacob, and a scepter shall arise from Israel. And but as for you, Bethlehem, I can't pronounce that. Too little to be among the clans of Judah. From you, one will go forth for me to be ruler in Israel. And from Isaiah, therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, a virgin shall be with child and bear a son, and she will call his name Emmanuel. So they would have known this. All right, well, what about astrology? In ancient days, astrology was used to predict present and future events, especially those involving rulers. Rulers often had their own star. That was a common thing for rulers to have, star and stellar events. And this is cool. The earliest Greek horoscope found on an original document is identified as the coronation horoscope of Antioch I of 7 July 62 BC. So it's just a cool thing to see that. Jupiter, Mercury, Mars, and the moon, see there's the moon, are in Leo. Isn't that nice? Astrology is still with us today and was still considered important even among rulers as recently as 1543, when Copernicus was hired to be a court ruler's astronomer. A notable exception were the Jews. They believed it was blasphemous to read the sky, and they did not do this. They kept track of the sky for lunar purposes because they had a lunar calendar, but they didn't try to interpret events from the sky. And it was interesting because Roy Young put this in for us, just to make sure that you know that while it might be fun to read a horoscope, there is no scientific evidence that our lives can be controlled by the stars. All right. Here's a passage from Luke. In those days, Caesar Augustus issued a decree that a census should be taken of the entire Roman world. This is the census that took place while Quirinius was governor of Syria. So again, this is helping us get a place on the calendar. Everyone went to his own town to register. Okay, so Joseph also went up from the town of Nazareth in Galilee to Judea to Bethlehem, the town of David, because he belonged to the house and line of David. All right. And if you wanted to know how far that was to walk, well, it was a ways. It would take you 34 hours walking from Nazareth to Jerusalem by the shortest pathway. That's really something. All right. He went there to register with Mary, who was pledged to be married to him and was expecting a child. And while they were there, the time came for the baby to be born, and she gave birth to her firstborn, a son. She wrapped him in cloth and placed him in a manger because there was no room for them in the inn. So our time clues from Luke. The current system of marking years is BC and AD, which we now refer to as before Common Era and Current Era, was established in the year 527 by a monk, Dionysius Exus, Denis the Little, and he did it by counting the Roman emperors. Even though he created this calendar, it wasn't widely adopted for hundreds of years afterwards, so it took time for everybody to get on board with using this particular calendar. Before this, you just said, well, I was born in the third year of the reign of the king of my area. So everybody had a different calendar depending on where they lived and who their ruler was. He left out the year 0, so our calendar jumps from 1 before current era to 1 current era. And there are incomplete records for minor rulers, so he may have had some mistakes in there. Luke informs us that Quirinius was governor of Syria, so and he from 6 to 12 current era, and he may have served earlier as well. And Luke tells us that a census was ordered, not a taxation. That may have been a mistranslation when it was brought into English. And in 2 BCE, Augustus was awarded the title Pater Patrae, father of the country, and he probably ordered the census prior to that event. So what year was Jesus born? Well, this is just a summary of the things that we have looked at. The bottom line is we aren't really sure what one year there is, but we do have a range of years from about 7 BC to about 1 BC. Who saw the star? Well, the shepherds were told by angels to go worship. Herod obviously hadn't seen the star because he was disturbed when the wise men showed up asking about Jesus. Even his priests were not aware of anything special happening in the sky. And of all the people mentioned in the accounts of Jesus' birth, it seems that only the wise men saw the star. Okay. When the Magi arrived in Bethlehem, Jesus was not an infant, he was a toddler. The Bible mentions him being in a house with his mother, like there. And this could have been up to 2 years after Jesus' birth. And we know that because when Herod went back and tried to kill Jesus, he eliminated all the male children under the age of 2. So our modern nativities with shepherds and wise men gathered around the baby all at the same time are just not accurate. So when we're looking for an astronomical explanation, remember, while the star may have been plainly visible, it seems to have had significance only to the Magi. The star went before the Magi and stood still over Bethlehem, and there's a time frame from about 7 to 2 BC to consider. So could it have been a meteor? They're bright, they're flashy, they're visible. Well, they're quick, okay? They zip across the sky and then they're gone. And they're usually considered a bad omen. And that could date back to the times when people remembered, an actual meteor hitting the ground or a shower of stars, a shower of rocks hitting the ground, and that would be unlucky. Could it have been a comet? Well, we had a comet in the sky in June, and it was Comet Neowise, and that was a cool thing. I hope you all got to get out there and see that. This is a comet from earlier. They don't look like this moving across the sky. This image was created by superimposing night after night after night after night, showing the slow motion of the comet across the sky. If you wanted to know what comets were in the sky right now, you can go to a website called inthesky.org and see that there are a number of comets visible to telescopes right now, not so much to the naked eye. So the comet that would have heralded Jesus' birth had to be bright enough to be seen because, of course, there was no binoculars or telescopes back then. They may usually have been bad omens or a negative sign, but Tigranes the Great, an Armenian king who lived a generation before the time of Christ, has Halley's Comet on his crown, and he was hailed as the King of Kings. So this would have been the 87 BCE appearance of the comet. So he thought it was good luck, and he put it on his own crown. There's some artwork depicting a comet as the Star of Bethlehem. This one was created 4 years after Comet Halley came by and obviously impressed the artist so much that he put a comet up here as the Christmas star. This artist working in stained glass never saw this comet. He was working apparently on hearsay because the comet is reversed. The head of the comet or the coma of the comet should always be closer to the sun. The tail is always being pushed away by solar wind. And so here in this picture, you see a bright sky there indicating that the sun is there, either probably a sunrise. And so the head should be closer to that sunrise and the tail should be pushing away. But I digress. Possible comets. We know of these possible comets thanks to the Chinese. They kept very detailed records, which survive even to today. And they tell us when certain comets were available. They considered comets almost like a dragon, or they're represented as a dragon in ancient art, ancient Chinese art. And we know that these are the comets that were available around the time of Christ. So they're visible for several months. They do appear to move. They can appear to stand still. They're visible by everyone. They're usually seen as a bad omen, but of course, like we saw, they could also be good news. One of the most famous is the Bero tapestry, and it was created to commemorate the fall of King Harold. So this is either bad news for King Harold. Here is the people seeing the star. Here is somebody going and telling Harold the bad news that there's a comet in the sky. And of course, this was Comet Halley, and William the Conqueror is on the way. So I guess in that case, Comet Halley was good news for the William the Conqueror, right? All right, could it have been a lunar occultation? This is our least possible choice. This is when the moon moves across something and blocks the light of a star or a planet for a couple of hours. And they do happen. I'm in the way there. Not sure how to move me out of the way. Can I move me? Oh, I can. All right. So here's Saturn going behind the moon, and here's it popping out a few hours later. And so, could it have been a supernova? Supernovas are when a star dies spectacularly, exploding out into space and sharing its material and light with the universe. Well, we don't want that to be too close to us, right? But if it's so far away that we can hardly see it or notice it, that's something else, right? We have not had a super bright one in our lifetimes, but there was one in 1054 that was so bright people could see it in the daytime for 23 days. This was recorded in Europe and in China. And recorded by Aboriginal peoples from around the world on cave paintings and on rocks. It was really, really amazing. The Chinese kept such meticulous records that we can tell that there were 3 supernova within the time frame that we're looking. All right. The Chinese called supernova tailless comets. So they recognized that that ball of light was a significant feature in the sky. So supernova may be visible for several months. They don't move and stand still relative to the stars. They are visible to everyone, and they are usually seen as a bad omen. Could it have been a planetary conjunction? This one is from 18 years ago, and I remember watching this. It was pretty cool. We have a conjunction going on right now, and I hope all of you will get out to see it on Monday night. It is visible even now if you can get out and the clouds don't block it. You should be able to see the 2 largest planets, Jupiter and Saturn, very close to each other in the southwestern sky right after sunset. So by 5 o'clock, go out and look to the southwest and see if you can see those 2 planets looking very, very close. Last night, I was able to see them in a single binocular view. And so that would be something to watch. By Monday, they will be coming so close together, they might even look like one object. I'm not sure. They might just be 2 objects extremely close together. Either way, it's not something that you want to miss. It only happens every 400 years, and we're very, very fortunate to get to see it in our lifetime. And if you want to read more about it, you can go to Sky and Telescope and online and read about it there. Kepler was the first person to work out why conjunctions happened and how they happened. And something that had been puzzling people in the sky for years was why we see a backward motion to the planet sometimes, and it's an optical illusion. You can see this optical illusion sometimes when you're sitting in a car and you start to move forward, and the other car will for a moment look like it's going backwards. That's this optical illusion of a retrograde motion. And so he worked out the fact that as Earth, which has got a smaller orbit than Mars or Jupiter or Saturn, is moving faster, so it comes past those planets, and for a short period of time, the planets will look like they're going backwards in our nighttime sky. Then eventually it all smooths out and they look like they're going forward again. Well, if that retrograde motion happens while a planet is in a conjunction with another planet, in other words, while we can see two of these further out planets at the same time, then we will get a triple conjunction because it'll look like they're passing and then they're passing again. And this had happened in around the 1600s, and Kepler was working on this, and he realized that it happens about every 400 years that we have a conjunction, not necessarily a triple conjunction, but a conjunction between Jupiter and Saturn. And he did the math and he realized that that conjunction itself might have been the message to the Magi that made them get up and go look for Jesus. He also saw a supernova in 1604 and he thought, well, maybe that could have been the Christmas star as well. So these two possible conjunctions, let's look at these. The first one is in Pisces, which is usually considered a Christian symbol because of the fish. Jupiter is the king planet. Saturn was the planet that was considered the protector of the Jews. I don't know why, I'm sorry. But they had a conjunction on May 29th, September 29th, and December 5th. And you can read all about it right here in this cuneiform tablet from ancient Babylon. And, which is in, this one is in the British Museum of Art, but there are actually 3 copies of this known in the world. The next conjunction that we're going to look at was from 2 BC, and this is a conjunction between Jupiter initially and Regulus. So Leo the lion was the Lion of Judah, represented the nation of Judah, and then Regulus is the king star because it's the heart of that constellation. So we have this conjunction in September, and in February, and then in May. And then in May, to make it even more special, they were joined by Venus. Venus is the only planet named for a female goddess, right? For a goddess or a female god. And so she represented birth. So you have birth and the king star and the king planet all in the same part of the sky. That would have been a very exciting conjunction. So what was it? We don't know. Could have been just a flat out miracle, nothing that we can explain. Might have been a meteor or a comet, supernova, conjunction, or even a lunar occultation. We don't know. What I do know is that I hope you stay safe and I hope you stay well. And I hope you'll get out on Monday night and look to the southwest and see the conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn in our very own night sky. And until then, I'd like to wish you a Merry Christmas. The end.